Good morning. We are headed out to check on the greenhouse today. It's still pretty chilly, as you can tell by my hat, but I am so grateful to be outside again. And I adore this greenhouse so much. I built it with help from some family and friends, some very generous neighbors who donated us their windows, and they're pretty good quality windows, so it holds in the heat pretty well. It has now been through 6 winters. It's starting to show its age, maybe a little bit. It is made largely from wood after all. It leaks a tiny bit, and there's some spots where bugs get stuck up in the ceiling, but I still love it. It is a fantastic place to start seeds in the spring, harden out seedlings that have been started indoors, and even just sit with a cup of coffee when it's a little chilly outside like today, which is why I've made space for a chair in here. We've done a little bit of landscaping around the greenhouse that actually needs to be redone this year. I will likely film that when I get to it. But the snowdrops here right now are gorgeous. They're really the only things blooming here in eastern Canada in the middle of March, at least in my garden. That and a handful of crocuses. First, I'm going to put my coffee down, and then I'm going to close the door because it is much warmer in here than it is outside, even without the sun out. This being my first major build, there's a lot of these little DIY things, like this little hook to keep the door closed from the inside. Now, there are a lot of things that have overwintered in here. I have some little cypress, some tarragon, and a fig tree that we will be dealing with soon. There's also this pot of parsley that seems to have pulled through. Parsley doesn't always overwinter here. And there are a few little succulents that I just took as cuttings. These are perennial. And I took a few cuttings late in the season and pretty much left them in here, kind of ignored them a little bit, but I think some of them may have pulled through. There are 2 shelves, and each of them are just big enough for 3 of these regular 10 by 20 trays. And you see I have a whole lot more than that in here right now. These 2 were on the floor actually because I grouped everything together last night so that I could toss a frost cloth over the top. And I already came out earlier this morning and removed that. I'm going to take the opportunity to sit here for a couple of minutes and finish my coffee, and then I'm going to tell you exactly what my system is for using this greenhouse in early spring. Now, everything that I have out here is pretty cold hardy. It can handle a frost, but I really try my best to not let it go below freezing here inside this greenhouse. Now, last night, I'm going to talk in Celsius, but I'll put the Fahrenheit conversion on the screen for all of you in the US. It was -1 outside last night, right outside of this greenhouse. Now I have 2 thermometers that I had in here. Here's one of them. I kept this one right here, and I had frost cloth over top, and I also brought 2 of these water bottles that I filled with hot water, just because this was the first really cold night since I brought these plants out here. I tossed the frost cloth over top, and initially it was staying 4 to 5 degrees warmer under the frost cloth than it was in the rest of the greenhouse, and that was still 2 to 3 degrees warmer than it was outside. So I have these. This was brand new. I showed it when I set it up in a video a couple of weeks ago, I think. It's been fantastic. And it also measures, I didn't know this at the time, but it measures the minimum and maximum temperatures. So if it hits really cold before I wake up, I can go back and see what the lowest temperature overnight was. So last night it was -1 outside. It was +2 in the greenhouse was the coldest temperature that it hit, and it was +5.5 under the frost cloth. So that was a big win. That is Celsius, of course. And I had this thermometer right there, and I had a second one hung on the wall about 6 feet up. So, and since I've gone through 6 winters with this greenhouse, I'm pretty confident of which temperatures I can leave these things out here. And really, if they hit 0, -1 or so, right, just below the freezing point, they would be fine, but their growth would slow down, and we don't want that. I don't want the growth to slow down, and if I had extra room on my grow shelves, I probably would not have brought them out yet. But I also want them to grow strong. I want them to grow in the conditions that they're eventually going to be planted out in. So this is part of the hardening off process, essentially, without having to lug them in and out all the time. Now, once the sun comes out, which is supposed to happen today, I guess it's better for filming if the sun is not out, but it's supposed to be sunny today. And if that were the case, it would easily hit 30 degrees in here. Again, I'll put the Fahrenheit conversion on the screen because I don't know that off the top of my head, but that is significantly warmer than it is in the house. And on a couple of occasions, I've come out here with my coffee and sat in a t-shirt and shorts and just enjoyed the warmth. It's like my own little automatic sauna. It's absolutely fantastic. So being March, still, I looked the other day, I think 8 to 9 weeks away from our average last frost date. And I'm able to sit out here on a warm day in a t-shirt while it's 25 degrees warmer than it is outside. This greenhouse doesn't have any source of heat. There are a few things I might try in the coming year. And I used to plant inside the ground. The ground wasn't great, but I did that for a couple of years. What I did last year was I dug a bunch of the soil out because it was flooding a little bit in the heavier rains that we had over the last 2 seasons. And I added a whole bunch of gravel and I left it there for the season just to pack down a little bit. What I'm going to do very shortly is level it and then add a bunch of brick. And already the stone is keeping a lot more heat in. It retains a lot more heat at night, helping to keep that temperature up. That is what accounts, I think, for the 3-degree temperature difference between outside and in here is that stone. And I'll be interested to see if adding a layer of brick over the top will make even more of a difference. So I'll be doing that in the coming weeks for sure before the regular garden work really picks up. What I did notice when I came in here to clean it out a couple of weeks ago was a couple of suspicious looking holes around the perimeter. So there are maybe some mice or some voles or something that has gotten in. So I'm keeping a firm eye on all of my seedlings for sure, which is why I try to keep them up on shelving as much as possible. I did fill in those holes and I'm keeping an eye on them to see if they get dug out again. Those holes may have been long since abandoned, I don't know. But if I were a small creature living outside during a rough winter and I could get myself into a protected space like this, I'd probably do it too. You can't really blame them. But I don't want them eating my seedlings. So I'm just gonna move these back up to the top, and then we'll have a look and see what I'm growing in here. I have 8 trays of ranunculus. These shelves each have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 right there, and then 1 up on this top shelf. 8 trays of ranunculus so far. There are still some in the basement. No, I think this is all. I have 2 trays of stock up here that I potted up into individual cells. They were just broadcast sown in small pots to save space, but these have been separated and they are growing on in cell trays for now. And then I have this small 12-pack of sweet peas. Over here I have some spinach. I have 2 gorgeous looking Mechanopsis seedlings. I showed you guys these a few weeks ago. They are doing really, really well. No germination yet on the new ones that I started, but I actually need to check them today. And then these are just bunching onions or green onions. So that is a good start. So it is a very delicate balance when it comes to grow space around here. I have to make sure that all of the new seeds that I start indoors have room on my grow shelves, which means periodically every 1 to 2 weeks, I have to move things out here. That means I need to prepare space to plant these outdoors, all of these things, within the next 2 weeks, probably under cover, so that more of those seeds that are growing on indoors can come out here to harden off. So it really is a delicate balance. Now, if I really wanted to, I could stuff a couple more shelving units in here, but that share is very important. I want my warm coffee spot on sunny days, and I'm not going to give that up without a fight. I could build a new greenhouse, and that is something that I've thought of, but I love this one so much. The benefit of having done this once is I definitely know the things that I would do different the second time around. And I would probably, instead of doing a DIY build, buy something. And I know exactly the one that I've picked out. There are no plans in the immediate future to buy it. I don't even know where I would put it in this small yard, but I can always dream. So for now, this is what I'm working with, and it's working out pretty well. Now this door can be opened, and I have a little hook on a shelf behind the greenhouse that I'll show you in a minute. Now, in terms of airing out this greenhouse, this window in the back corner opens fairly easily. This one on the other corner can open, but it's getting a little bit more difficult. And all of these windows, I think that one right there can open and the center one can open, which gives some airflow on the ground. But being in an outdoor environment for 5.5 years now, gone through 6 winters, they are a little harder to open. So I'm going to have to do a good deep clean and maybe spray those window casings with something, because airflow is vital in a greenhouse situation, because too much heat is definitely a bad thing, especially with these plants that like to grow a little bit cooler. Ranunculus should be flowering by the beginning of June, earlier if possible, but I didn't get them started quite as early as I had hoped this year. So if they get exposed to too much heat, they will go dormant and then I won't get flowers at all. Show you what I do with the door too, even though it's a little chilly today, so I'm not going to leave it open for too long. But if I pull this door all the way back, I have this shelf behind the greenhouse that works really well when it's warmer for hardening things off, and I use it a lot in the summer too. But I have this little hook right there that holds the door so it doesn't swing open and closed, and then that airs the greenhouse out beautifully. So I am going to leave the greenhouse now, and I will close it back up because it is still pretty chilly outside. So that is my greenhouse, and it's still generally a little bit too early and too cold to be doing a lot of work in the perennial beds and the decorative gardens, but I have been taking advantage of some warmer, a bit drier days to start to clear out where I'm planting all my cut flowers this year. These raised beds, some of them have lilies and a few daffodils. The tulips and daffodil foliage have started to come up. That's pretty much the only thing I can see other than the snowdrops blooming so far. That means I'm gonna have to hoop those to keep them safe from deer and rabbits. I had a bit of a problem with that last year. So I'll be working on that over the next week or two. We've even built a new compost bin. So far it's half done. I'm hoping to get a second bay put on within the next couple of weeks, but we have the first one and I need to get it into place. That is not where it's staying. But a little update and tour of the greenhouse here in early spring for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.